Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar presentation. The National Disability Services, or NDS, the Network of Council of Social Services through ACOSS and Jobs Australia are working in collaboration to implement the National SACS Education and Information Program on behalf of the Commonwealth Government. The focus of the program is to provide factual information about the move to the SCADS Modern Award and the outcome from the Equal Remuneration Order. This webinar focuses on WA, State, SACS Award and Federal Modern Award implementation. The content of the program has been developed by NDS, the Network of COSS and Jobs Australia, and our aim is to meet the needs of employees who have employees under the SCADS Modern Award. We're also working in collaboration with the ASU, who at the same time are rolling out a program which focuses on the needs of employees employed under the SCADS Modern Award. So as I say, we're going to look at the WA state system and also the Federal Modern Award implementation. We'll be looking at the Modern Fair Work system and specifically the Modern Award and changes to conditions in WA. Then we'll have a look at the equal pay case and the impact in WA and the transition to the Modern Award in WA, and with specific reference to jurisdictional issues and whether you're in the state or federal system. So in terms of federal versus state IR systems, the Fair Work Act only applies to organisations that are constitutional trading corporations, and we'll have a look at that. And it also applies for those organisations that are not constitutional corporations in states that have referred their IR powers to the Commonwealth, of which WA has not referred its IR powers to the Commonwealth. So the current situation is for those organisations that are constitutional trading corporations, it's the NES and the SCADS Modern Award that applies, and this provided for a 2.9% wage increase from the 1st of July this year. For those of you sitting in the state system, the SACS employees are covered by the WA Industrial Relations Act, and a state wage increase of 3.4% was awarded this year. So in terms of transitional arrangements, for those of you that are covered by the SCADS award, if you have staff engaged under SACS or crisis accommodation, we needed to move to the SCADS classifications from the 1st of July of this year. And if you had staff in home care and family daycare, they actually needed to have been translated over to the Modern Award from the 1st of February this year. And the reason they went earlier is because they're excluded from the Equal Remuneration Order. In terms of wages, the Modern Award rates applied from the 1st of July this year, except where the current award rates were higher and you had to maintain those rates of pay. As I said, provided for in the national minimum wage increase from the 1st of July this year was a 2.9% wage increase. And for home care and family daycare, the move to the Modern Award occurred on the 1st of February this year. In relation to the phasing of penalties and loadings, we need to move from the old rates of loading and penalty across to the Modern Award rates, and we commenced that phasing process from the 1st of July this year for SACS and crisis accommodation. It actually started in February for those in home care and family daycare. However, there was another move in July this year, so they're actually both sitting on the same phased rates from the 1st of July this year. Just as an example, the old SACS WA had a casual loading prior to any of the phasing, it was 20%. Home care went to 22% as of February, but now, as I said, everyone's now sitting on the phased amount of 23%. Then next year it'll move to 24%, and then finally in July 2014 we'll be on the Modern Award rate, which is the 25% casual loading. So in terms of the Equal Remuneration Order basics, Fair Work Australia announced in February this year the creation of the Equal Remuneration Order, and that was to commence in December 2012. So we've just seen the first increase in the Equal Remuneration Order. They also advised that this was done via 9 equal instalments, and that's to be done each December over the next 8 years right up to 2020. Now, in looking here, what we're looking at is the increases to the Modern Award rates. So looking at the ER percentage column, they found that level 2 moves by 19% right through to level 8 moving by 41%. However, they also found there was a lack of potential bargaining within the industry, and so a 4% loading was also applied to that equal remuneration percentage, taking the full equal remuneration order for a level 2 to 23%, right down to a level 8 that will be 45%. And then, as I said, it is divided by the 9 equal instalments over the 8 years. So the percentages each year in December that the modern award rates will move by is reflected here, 2.6 for a level 2, right through to a 5% increase for a level 8. In terms of transitional issues, where your old award rates are higher than the modern award rates, the old transitional rates is maintained instead of the modern award rate, and the transitional rates do actually increase in line with the equal remuneration order to get to the modern award rates in 2020. It's just that they increase at a slower rate than the modern award will. In terms of the arithmetic, we've tried to make it easy in explaining here the way to do the calculations. So A is reflected as the full equal remuneration payment, or where we'll be in 2020. B is the current award rate. Now that'll be whether the modern award rate is what prevailed, or, as I said, if your transitional award rate was higher, you'll need to preserve that amount. So the way to do the calculation is, where do we need to be in 2020, which is reflected here as A, minus where we currently are. We need to calculate the difference and then divide that by 1/9. And then what we'll do is add it to each employee's rate of pay, and that will be the increase that they see each December. So I guess an easier way to have a look at it is, what we're looking at here is, column A is the full equal remuneration order amount. So by December 2020, this is, if we imagine this is what the arrow will look like. If B is where your current, where the current modern award rate is, what you're looking at is, as I said, the difference between the two, and then divide it by 1/9 each year. So each December, these rates will move by an applicable amount, a percentage, and that's what we're looking at before. In terms of if your current preserved rate was above the modern award rate, you start from a much higher base. Again, you need to move to the same full equal remuneration order amount, but there's less of a difference to be taken up. And then when divided by 1/9, you can see that's basically just a smaller chunk of the 1/9 increases. So in terms, we use here as an example the New South Wales rates of pay only because they are substantially higher than the modern award rates. And what we're looking at is the bottom dark green line shows you this is the modern award rate, and it moves twice each year. Once in July by the national minimum wage increase, and secondly by the equal remuneration order in December each year. For the purposes of this table, we've used a 3% national minimum wage increase just to show you what it would look like. You can also see, you can see the modern award moves at quite a high rate up to 2020, and also reflected here is the New South Wales SACS rate, which sat higher than the modern award rate. You can see the same two increases in July, the national minimum wage increase and the December increase each year. However, it moves at a slower proportionate rate, but we still arrive, thankfully, at the same rate, modern award rate, in 2020. In terms of transitional rates, what we're looking at here is, there's two things we need to take into account, and that is we needed to translate the classifications. So we're looking at a WA levels 7 and 9 translating to a modern award level 7 and 8 respectively. So if a WA classification 7 translated to a level 7, what we're comparing here is the modern award rate. So to take you through that, prior to June 2012, the modern award rate for a level 7.1 was $1,035.90. When we add the July increase to those rates of pay, you can see that someone on the WA rate moved from $114.30 over to the modern award rate because the modern award rate was higher. Then we needed to recalculate the equal remuneration component to include the 2.9% national minimum wage increase. So the full equal remuneration order amount would be $1,013.60. This gives you a difference of $447.40. Then, as I said, you divide that by 1/9, which is the 9 equal instalments. So each December that person would see an increase of $49.70, taking their rate from the 1st of December up to $1,115.60, and this is reflected by a 4.7%, the full equal remuneration order amount, which is 4.7%. In terms of classification level 8 in the modern award, you can see here that the modern award rate was $1,100.60, which once we've recalculated it with a 2.9% wage increase is $1,642.10. So that's the full amount that the equal remuneration order will be on the modern award. However, in looking at the WA example, classification 9 that translates to a level 8, in June they would have been on $1,186.80, and you could see that's higher than the modern award rate. Again, we applied the 2.9% wage increase to their rate, and then we recalculated that. We've got to get to the modern award rate, and that's the $1,642.10. So as I said, you work out what that rate, the rate that the employee needs to be on, come the full modern award rate, which is the $1,642.10, minus where they are now, which is the $1,221.20, which gives you a difference of $420.90. However, at the same rate, the modern award would need to have moved by the difference of $509.60. Then we work out 1/9 to work out our percentages. So as I said, a classification 8 moves by 5%. So 1/9 of that each December is $56.60 on the modern award. Add that back to where they currently are, and that would move the modern award from the 1st of December to $1,189.10. And calculating the difference for a level 9.1 that translated to a SCADS level 8, the difference was $420.10, and when divided by the 9 equal instalments, you can see that person will move by $46.80 compared to the modern award rate moving by $56.60. So we add that difference back in, and you can see that person remains above award. However, they won't get the full equal remuneration order increase of 5%, but proportionately they'll get the 3.8%. So this just shows that they do move, but they move at a slower proportion if you're on the transitional higher rates. So how does the equal remuneration order apply in the state or the federal system? Again, what we're looking at is it's really dependent on whether you're a constitutional trading corporation. And to give you some indication, you'd be looking at whether you're incorporated or you're a limited organisation, and whether you're engaged in significant or substantial trading activity. What is trading activity? It involves some notion of buying or selling that generates revenue. So generally, if more than 90% of your income comes from buying and selling, there's a good chance that you would be deemed to be a constitutional trading corporation. However, in terms of government funding, there is contradictory case law, and prior to 2008, it was generally held that receipt of government funding, public or private, to provide services was not trading. However, there has been some confusion of late, and outcomes may differ in state and federal jurisdictions. However, funding arrangements which look like commercial contracts could potentially be seen as trading, but block grants are less likely to be trading. Again, you can see there is a question mark over that. Where it's uncertain, the only precise test is a court case, and that could be a rather costly exercise. In terms of the constitutional trading corporation or not, to work out whether you're in the state or federal system, if you're not sure, we would say that it's best to get some advice from your employer association as a starting point. In terms of the awards, if you're on the federal award, if you're a trading corporation, as I say, you stay on the pre-reform award. If you're a non-trading corporation, then it'll be in the state system. So the expiry of the transitional awards, the pre-reform awards moved to the SCADS Modern Award, and the transitional SACS award expired March 2011 and moved to the WAIR system. So what's the difference? What we've set out here are some examples of the difference between the conditions in the federal system and the state system. If you're on the SCADS, the equal remuneration order applies, whereas in WA it will be the state wage increases each year. In terms of rates of pay, they're higher and the equal remuneration order applies. There's also the 2.9% increase from July this year, and as I say, each July you'll see a national minimum wage increase. The state wage increase this year was 3.4% at the same time in July this year, and again we're not sure what it will be next year. In terms of casuals, under the SCADS Modern Award there's a 2 or 3 hour minimum and also a loading of 25% that is phased in. Under the state system it's a 2 hour minimum and it maintains a loading of 20%. In terms of redundancies, there's no separate severance for small employers. However, in the state system, there is still a system of severance payments for small employers. In terms of shifts, there are some changes to the definitions of what a day, afternoon and night shift are, but in the state system there is no such change. In terms of allowances, there are some allowances that exist in the state system, such as remote allowances, that aren't provided for in the SCADS award. In terms of annual leave, it's a straight 4 weeks or 5 weeks for potential shift workers, and that's defined in the award, but there is additional leave under the state system for remote workers. In terms of compassionate leave, it's 2 days paid, and that includes serious illness or injury as well as death. However, in the state system it's 3 days paid, but it's only in the circumstances of death. So now you need to make a decision. You need to decide which system you're in. In a practical matter, you should stick with the decision unless the circumstances significantly change. So that's where we're talking about whether you're a constitutional trading corporation or not, and whether you're sitting in the state system or the federal system. If you require any further information, as I say, it's probably best that you have a chat, certainly if you're questioning whether you're a constitutional trading corporation or not. Get that information from your employer association, or any further information or links to other sites can be referred to the NDS website, which is on your screen now. Thank you very much for listening today, and hopefully it's been helpful information for you.